Once upon a time in a cozy little town, there lived a tiny cat named Whiskers. Whiskers was a playful, curious kitten who loved to explore every corner of his home. His favorite spot was the kitchen, where the smell of fresh-baked goodies always filled the air. Whiskers had a particular fondness for treats, and his owner, Mrs. Jenkins, never failed to spoil him with his favorite snacks. As the days went by, Whiskers noticed that his little bowl was always full of the tastiest delights: creamy milk, tender fish, and crunchy kibble. Mrs. Jenkins would chuckle as Whiskers devoured his meals with gusto, his little belly growing rounder each day. The more Whiskers ate, the happier he seemed, and Mrs. Jenkins couldn't resist giving him just a little more. One morning, Whiskers woke up feeling a bit heavier than usual. He tried to leap onto his favorite windowsill, but to his surprise, he couldn't quite make it. With a confused meow, he looked down at his paws and noticed something different. He had grown! His once tiny frame was now a bit more robust, his paws a little plumper, and his belly, well, it was definitely rounder. As the weeks passed, Whiskers continued to eat to his heart's content. He played less and lounged more, enjoying the lazy days filled with naps and snacks. Every time Mrs. Jenkins passed by, she would give his growing belly a gentle pat, whispering, "You're becoming quite the big boy, Whiskers." Before long, Whiskers was no longer the tiny kitten everyone remembered. He had grown into a giant cat, towering over the other cats in the neighborhood. His once dainty paws were now large enough to cover a whole toy mouse, and when he curled up in his favorite chair, there was barely any room left for anyone else. Despite his size, Whiskers remained the same sweet, loving cat he had always been. He still loved to be cuddled and would purr contentedly whenever Mrs. Jenkins stroked his soft fur. But now, when he walked through the house, the floor would creak under his weight, and when he meowed, it was deep and booming. The other cats in the neighborhood were in awe of Whiskers. They would gather around him, listening to his tales of endless treats and warm, sunny naps. Whiskers, now the gentle giant, became a legend in the town, a symbol of what happens when a little cat is loved just a bit too much. And so, Whiskers lived out his days as the biggest, happiest cat in the town, surrounded by love, snacks, and the occasional giggle from Mrs. Jenkins as she watched her once tiny kitten transform into a magnificent giant.